together. So I think the reason I wanted to have these meetings, and I know this is lousy timing, but I wanted to have it time for, if you want to make some adjustments in what you're doing, where you had time to do that, especially in the crop insurance side, before September 30th, which is the last day to make changes on your crop insurance policy for wheat in particular. We're already past that deadline for canola. So that's kind of the reason that, in spite of the lousy timing, I thought this was, only way to do it. We had Lawton, we got tonight, we got Thursday night at Chickasha, and I was hoping, at some point maybe we'd be so wet that everybody didn't have anything better to do, so they'd come to the meeting. But we haven't got to that point yet. Oh, that's my phone. We're going to talk about four areas. One's going to be production, the second one's going to be the FSA programs, third one is going to be crop insurance, and the fourth one is going to be basis. And we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on any of them. And please don't take me being here and y'all being here tonight as that I know a bunch of stuff you don't know. That's not the case, especially when it comes to production. But what I've tried to do is just listen real close to what people are saying and say, gosh, that sounds like a good idea. So maybe the people who come to the meeting would want to hear that. Or, yeah, I hear what you're saying there, but there's a downside to that, and maybe we better talk about the downside. So I'm not saying I'm giving you anything new, but hopefully something maybe you've heard before and it just never had sunk in, or something you have done before and it just hasn't been recalled to your memory. And so that's kind of my goal, is to approach it that way. We're always kind of considering all of our alternatives. We kind of stop looking at them real close when, if you're a wheat farmer, when wheat 9 1/4, you don't look at the alternatives too much, because 9 1/4 wheat works really well. As wheat's been going down, we've looked at all types of alternative crops: canola, rye, barley, triticale, both for grazing, for hay, and for grain purposes. There's markets for all those things. We've had a lot of people this year that talk pretty hard about, gosh, I was going to do canola and clean my wheat fields up sometime anyway. So maybe when wheat's less than $3 a bushel, maybe that's a good time to plant canola and clean up my fields, which I think is, that's logical. That makes sense. And I also think, if you're asking yourself, I'm going to either plant a wheat crop or I'm going to plant a canola crop. And if one of those crops are going to be significantly higher come harvest time, would you guess it's more likely to be the wheat or the canola, given the world supply of wheat right now? Probably would be the canola. So if you're going to plant a crop that might rebound in price more, maybe canola is a good choice. But for all kinds of reasons, people have considered alternate crops. They've also considered, instead of just harvesting my wheat, maybe I'll graze it until March. I don't normally do that, but maybe I'll graze it until March 1 and get some gain on my own cattle, or get some gain on some cattle that I bring in on the per pound of gain, and then harvest it. And when I put my harvested crop and my gain together, maybe that comes out in. Or maybe I just bale it after I graze it. Just graze it, then bale it. Maybe I just graze it completely out. If you're looking for someone to pay 55 to 70 cents on gain, don't hold your breath. Those days are gone. Most everybody that I'm hearing that is looking for pasture is getting offered 28 to 38 cents, and most of it's coming in the the 30 to 35 cent range. So that's kind of where the market is for gain cattle. So maybe graze out. Maybe that doesn't make much sense if they're other people's cattle. Maybe it does. Maybe you buy your own cattle. Or maybe if you try to buy your own cattle and you can't find a way to make money on them, you say, gosh, that's worse than producing $2.50 wheat. Silage. There's some people in this area that feed silage, and they might be getting to forward contract. It's off now, it went off. Here, hold on, maybe I won't set it off again. You probably want to contract ahead. I don't, you know, if everybody in the country decided they were going to sell their wheat for silage, there's not enough silage guys in the country to use it all, is there? No. So if you're going to do silage, you want to be contracting that out ahead of time. Maybe you just put it into a cover crop. And cover crops have been getting a lot of media lately, and there's getting a lot of research that says that's a pretty good idea just for soil health. And by doing that, you can preserve your insured first crop for a summer crop behind your cover crop. I said that, and I should have asked the question first. How many of you are aware that they made some real significant changes to cover cropping last year? In the past, if you planted wheat and you weren't really planning to harvest it, but you just planted it and you were going to graze it or you were going to bale it, and you wanted to insure milo, corn, or soybeans in the summer, what did you have to do with that wheat crop? You had to destroy it. And you had to destroy it before what? Do what? Yeah, before any of that wheat went to head, you had to destroy it, or your summer crop was ineligible to be insured. Well, how many of you tried to put wheat up for hay before it went to head? It's kind of cool, isn't it? It's kind of wet. It's kind of hard to get it put up before it goes to head. So, last year, they changed the cover crop rules so that if you plant a cover crop, and if you certify that as a cover crop at the FSA office, so that when you get out your 578, it says, you know, wheat or mixed grain or whatever, and the intended use says cover crop, then all you have to do is destroy that crop 15 days before you plant your summer crop, and your summer crop is insurable. Okay? That's a significant difference in the old rules. What it does is it lets you wait for that wheat to go to head, where it makes a little better tonnage, and it also is easier to bale the hay, and then still you go plant your beans or your milo, and you get to insure that second crop. Couldn't do that before that rule changed. So why would that maybe be a good decision? If none of the crops are worth anything right now, why insure a crop that's not insurable for much? Maybe the grains markets bounce back by summer. Maybe you could go plant beans or milo this summer and have a crop that is guaranteeing you a little higher level of revenue, you know, but still make use of your grazing and your hay on your wheat that you planted as a cover crop. I'm not saying that's a good idea for everybody. I'm just saying that's one alternative that the change in the cover crop rules has made available. You can basically defer your dry land insured crop to the summer by planting and certifying a cover crop with your wheat or with your rye or with your triticale or with your mixed grains. You can just do nothing, just let it lay fallow. You know, one guy told me, he said, at least if I don't do nothing, I know what I'm losing. I'm losing my rent, you know, if I don't do anything. So, I mean, for some people that may be the right choice. Be ready to sell forward delivery on wheat. You know, kind of know at what point you can make a little money, figure out what you got in it. I mean, if we see a rebound in wheat prices, it may not last long. And so if we see a rally in this wheat market in November or in January, and you know you're going to harvest wheat and it gets up there where you can make a little money, don't be afraid to contract your insured bushels if you're insured. Now, if you're not insuring your wheat, then you might want to be a little cautious of that. But if you're insuring your wheat and you've got revenue protection, you need not worry about making a delivery contract for your guaranteed bushel. So if you've got a 10,000 bushel guarantee on your wheat insurance, you can contract up to 10,000 bushels. And if wheat goes to the roof and you don't make a crop, you're going to come out all right on your contract because you've got revenue protection on your contract from your crop insurance, and it's going to pay out a second check based on what the wheat is at harvest time. So you're not going to get burned on a delivery contract. Now you might get burned on the basis of a delivery contract today, but you're not going to get burned on the base see $8, $9 wheat at harvest time. We might see $4 or $5 for a short period of time between now and harvest. And if that price will work for you, be ready to sell some at that price, and don't end up, back at $2.95 at harvest time if that's where it ends up. So those are things to consider on production, things to avoid. If you're planting canola and if you're planning on insuring it, check with your crop insurance agent. Make sure that you have canola on your policy. If you don't have it on your policy, it's too late to add it. It had to be added by August 31st. So don't go into that expecting to be able to insure, plant it, and then go to turn in your acres and find out you don't have canola on your policy. If you do the cover crop thing, there is some drawbacks. They're not, those acres aren't eligible for FSA programs for the most part. Now, there's a caveat to that. They're not, you can't insure them, you can't collect a NAP coverage, you can't collect a livestock forage payment, which we're a long ways away from collecting on that, because that's always going to be drought related, so is NAP most of the time. You can get your base wheat acres, even if you plant and call it a cover crop, because remember, you don't even have to plant your wheat to get your base wheat acres. But if you've got cotton base, you've got generic base, you do have to plant a qualifying commodity. So a cover crop does not count as a qualifying commodity. So if you've got generic cotton base acres and you don't plant wheat, and you don't plant a summer crop, then you wouldn't be in on either one of those programs. So it's not really this year, because we're wet, there's not much drawback to the cover crops, but you do need to be aware of that. Most of the counties are 15 days, and I'm pretty sure Caddo is. But if you do the cover crop and you want to go to a summer crop, be sure and just double check and make sure that some are 10 days, some are 15 days, some are 30 days, but the 30 days are further west. But that cover crop to an insured summer crop is a pretty good option for a lot of people. Anybody else in here, anybody got plans of something that's not up here that you think somebody in this room might benefit from hearing? Just things you're doing production-wise to kind of deal with what we're looking at. Okay, if you do, you're not gonna say nothing anyway. Okay. Okay. Let's go to the FSA programs now. In the new farm bill, there's crop insurance, there's FSA programs, there's conservation programs. They all are intended to work together. On the FSA programs, there is still some lingering loan deficiency payments out there for the wheat. Yesterday it was 29 cents a bushel. It's kind of been a moving target about what is eligible to be applied for the loan deficiency. And basically what it is when wheat drops below loan price, which I can't remember if it's 318 or 314. 314. When it goes below 314 on a local basis, then if you still own wheat that you've harvested, that you don't have in the loan program, or if you grazed out wheat, or as we found out last week, if you baled wheat, and if you bail the wheat and you want to get an LDP payment, they're going to need to know where the hay is at. They're going to probably come and count the bales. So you've got to give an accounting. I don't think it matters how much it made, but they want to know that you did bail it. Even if you took an early appraisal, like let's say it was April and you had late April, or it was whenever, March, April, you had a place that was kind of grown up and you just decided I don't want to try to harvest it, it's got too much trash in it, and they came out and they counted the tillers and they said, gosh, this is 40 bushel wheat. Had one producer down at Chattanooga, he had 485 acres total, he short rated 30 of it and grazed it out, called an appraiser on the rest of it, wanted to get the appraisal to bump his yield up a little bit, and then bailed it. And he had from 42 to 48, 53 bushel appraisals. Well, he took the appraisal, bailed the wheat. So he's going to get an LDP payment on his appraised bushels. So the bushels, on the hay acres is something that's been added just the past week or so. So in a year where the things we're growing aren't doing a great job of providing enough revenue, you want to be sure you don't overlook some of the revenue that's out there as part of the farm bill, and the LDP payment is part of that. Price loss coverage. If you remember back when they introduced the farm bill, you had to sign up all your acres in either PLC or ARC. And most everybody, if they went ARC County. The PLC payment for last year's wheat will be coming out here in a month or two. You can count on about 61 cents a bushel for the wheat. That's a pretty known number. So if you look at your base acres, and if you have 30 bushel average on your farms, you just take 30 bushels times 61 cents, which is, what is that? About $18. And then take 85% of that, which gets you down to a little over 15. I would say if you're in a PLC for wheat and you've got a 30 bushel average, you can figure on about $15 an acre. The ARC, there's no official word on ARC. It's a combination of yield and price. But for the 2015 crop year, how many of you got that SCO payment last year on your wheat? I know several in here that did. And that SCO payment is based on the county's average for 2015. So we were below the county's average, or the SCO payment would have triggered last year. So we had below average, I don't know how much below, but we had below average 2015 wheat in Caddo County. We also know that the price is below the benchmark because we're getting a 61 cent payment if we're on the PLC. So the yield was down and the price is down, so I would expect that the ARC would pay again, even though there's no official word out. And if you looked at that chart, from where the ARC payment triggers to where it maxes out is just about that far. There's not much spread. I mean, it triggers a loss and then it maxes out almost in the same breath. So I would be really surprised if there's not an ARC payment. I would be somewhat surprised if it's not the maximum again, which was about that same number, about $15 an acre. So I think whether you're in ARC or PLC, it wouldn't be, out of line to think that your check will probably be about $15 an acre unless there's sequester, whatever. I think it's 6%. So, they're peeling some of the layers of that onion off, even at that. If you want to do MAP on your grass, you need to enroll on that by November 15th, and that'll be for next year, not this year. And this year, please, because there's so many things that are overlapping now, please check with your crop insurance agent before you go certify your fall planted acres. Because once you certify, they don't let you change it. And if you certify something different than what you want to do with your insurance, then that puts us in a really awkward spot. And please don't go into the FSA office, sit down with Kelly, and then call me and say, hey, I'm at the FSA office, what am I supposed to do? Because that don't work very well either. In the past, it really hasn't mattered much. Today, it really does matter how you certify. And I'm talking mostly on grain crops, on wheat, whether you're grazing it, haying it. The safe, if you find yourself there and you wake up and you're in the FSA office and you didn't call your agent and you're certifying wheat, the safest thing to do is just certify it all for graze and grain, GS. Because if you certify GS, that keeps your acres eligible to go on your multi-peril policy if you want to put them there. It also lets you put them on the rainfall policy if you want to put them there. But if you go in and you certify grain only, and you're wanting to put it on the rainfall policy, we can't do that. Or if you certify graze only, and you want to put it on your multi-peril policy, you can't do that. So, just as a plea, and you'll probably get a letter to this same effect here in about a week or 10 days, before you go in to certify, if we're your crop insurance agent, give us a call. If we're not, give whoever it is a call, and just say, hey, I'm going in to certify my wheat, or my barley, or my triticale, or whatever. How do I need to certify? Because I wanna have a little quick conversation and say, hey, I don't really even want any insurance. Well, have you thought about going cover crop then? So that maybe if you decide to plant milo or beans this summer, you can certify those. You know, give us one last chance to just talk about the options and go in and certify consistent with what you really want to do with your crop plan. Things to avoid. You know, the stewardship payments, the things that you get through the FSA office that are just they kind of get routine and commonplace, and sometimes it's easy to get out of compliance. Well, I don't think this coming year is going to be a year that if you are eligible for a stewardship payment, you're going to want to get it. That cash is going to come in handy. So, you know, don't get out of lockstep with your conservation plans, with your stewardship programs. Don't count on the livestock forage. I mean, I know it paid big, then it paid pretty big again, and I know we had one dry month this year, but that's not going to get us eligible for LDP payments. I don't think we're going to see, you know, not for this fall anyway. We're a long ways from being in D3, D4 stage drought. Be sure every year, and I forgot to take that off. It is August 1st. You got to go in every year and certify your ARC and PLC acres. You know, I know it was a one-time irrevocable decision to put your acres in one or the other, or one and the other. I mean, you've got some people have got some in ARC and some in PLC, but you still have to go in annually and enroll those farms to be eligible for the payments. And they're pretty good about sending out notes and emails or whatever to remind us, but don't not get that done, because as anybody that's on PLC put a little bit of thought into, if these prices don't rebound sometime between now and harvest, what could that PLC payment that's 61 cents this year, what could that be this time next year? Benchmark price is $5.50. So if the average price that people sell their wheat for this year, for the 2016 harvested year, if it's $3.50, it'd be $2 an acre, which would be, $2 a bushel, which on that same 30 bushels would be $60 an acre. I'd hate for someone to not get that payment because they didn't go in August 1st and certify their acres. So communicate with your FSA office, I guess, is the best way to put that. Now on the crop insurance side, this is just the first bullet point. I got a little chart to go with this. I've had a lot of people, and I understand, believe me, I understand in some cases it might be the right thing to do. Well, I'm not even going to insure my land. I mean, if you're planning to graze it all out, that's probably a good idea. If you're planning to harvest it, it may still be a good idea, but think through it first. You know, of all the things you're going to do, I mean, I just spent $7 today to spray army worms because I was trying for early pasture. And my guess is, if we don't get the big rain this weekend, I'm probably going to spray it again. And so, you know, that's $14, and it's not unheard of that I would have to spray it a third time. It's $21. There's some things you can do with your crop insurance that will make it a lot more efficient and still give you good coverage, and I'm not saying coverage like you wish you had, but if you lose your whole crop, isn't $75 or $80 better than nothing an acre? If you lose the whole thing, sure it would be. And so if you can get the price for some coverage cheap enough that it makes sense, it might make sense to economize your insurance, but not cancel it necessarily. There's lots of ways we can do that. For sure, anybody today, and I always say, hey, there's exceptions. I'm not sure there's exceptions this year. If you're on optional units where you've got all of your farms insured separately, instead of all of your farms lumped together for one big lump sum, the cost is about 3 times higher for optional units versus enterprise units. And if you haven't changed that, change it this year. Now, if you don't like it, and wheat goes back up, change it back next year. But if you're looking for a way to get the biggest bang for your buck, moving from optional units to enterprise units will get you more extra coverage for your dollar than anything will. We talked about SCO a while ago. Everybody in here that's on our policies that went PLC has got SCO on their policy right now. And that worked out great last year. And it might work out great this year, but the SCO coverage is the most expensive part of the coverage because it's covering the first bushels that you're gonna lose. And if it's enough higher than your base plan, then you might look at that and say, you know, if I was gonna trim this up a little bit, I might just trim the SCO premium. Not saying that's the right thing to do. I'm saying that if I was gonna cancel my coverage, but I could handle the premium if I just took off the SCO and went to enterprise units, I'd much rather have coverage on an enterprise unit basis without SCO than to have nothing. Make sure that you got the yield exclusion put in there last year where you've got as many bushels to insure as possible. And then look at your coverage levels. Things to avoid. If you decide to cancel your policy or to change it considerably, if your policy makes up the main collateral for your operating loan, don't go change something on your multi-peril policy and then expect your bank to just live with it. Because if that don't work, that becomes a real issue. So if you, and you know, you guys have been in and visited with bankers this year. Even if last year it wasn't a big deal, if it might be this year, I would make those changes without clearing it with my lender first. I mean, if you've got a good basis for what you want to do and you communicate ahead of time, they'll probably be all right with it. But if you just do it and say, hey, that's what I wanted to do, so I did it, they may say, well, you know, I can't renew your loan. I'm glad you're happy with that choice, but I can't renew your loan. So don't make big changes in your crop insurance before talking to your lender. So let's go back to the coverage and just touch on that real quick. And I'm assuming everybody would have enterprise. I didn't even go back and do this on optional units because on optional units it wouldn't be that much difference on the SCO because optional units are all done on an enterprise unit basis anyway. I mean, SCO is on an enterprise unit basis no matter what your underlying coverage is. So in this particular case, we got 75% coverage. His cost is $585 an acre. He's got $95.92 of coverage. So if you take this into that, it's costing about 6%. That's his premium for his base policy. His SCO pays from 76 to 86%. And remember, that's on a county basis. That's not on your production, that's on the county. So in theory, you could have a bumper crop, but the county be 70% of its normal yield, and you still get an SCO payment. On the other hand, you could have half of a normal yield, and the county could have its average, and you wouldn't get an SCO payment. So the SCO is totally based on the county's yield. The cost for SCO for this particular producer was $2.17 an acre. The amount of coverage, remember, you know, the year that we collected, the rate was still like $6.20 a bushel. Well, now this year it's going to be $4.59. So if he triggers a full SCO payment, he can get $14.07. So if you take that and divide that into there, it's 15.4%. That's the cost of the SCO. So it's over twice as high as the base plan. So if I'm looking to, across the board, economize my expenses, and I'm looking at crop insurance, and I'm saying I don't want to get rid of it, I just want to make it more efficient, after I've looked at enterprise units and done all the obvious things, probably the next things in my crosshairs would be the SCO. Even though we had a really good experience with it last year, and if we have a below average crop this year, I mean, I don't care if it costs 15%. If you get $14 back for $2, it would still be a good deal. But what if we make a crop? Well, then it costs you $2. And so if it costing you $2 is your bigger concern, I would love rather take $2 and give up this 14 than to take, you know, these $2 and give up 20 down here by lowering my coverage or just throw the whole thing out the if you wanna go from 70% down to 60, that cuts your premium from 585 down to 310. So if we kept it at 75 and kept the SCO, we're right at $8. And we would be 95 plus 14, we'd be about $110 of coverage. If we just go get rid of the SCO, we cut that $8 down to 585, and we still got $95 of coverage. Or if we want to lower our coverage down to 60%, now we've gone from $8 down to $310, and we've still got $76 of coverage. Now, none of those are what they used to be, but all of those would come in real handy in a crop failure. And so, you know, let's think it through. If we're talking about just canceling it, and if you're really gonna harvest, you know, is it really worth saving $5.85 or $3 to have nothing if we have a failure? I mean, we don't have them very often, but they do happen. And, you know, just, you've got from now until September 30th to cancel it, to remove SCO, to go to enterprise units, or to lower your coverage. So I hope you can see why we wanted to go ahead and have these meetings, even though it's not the best of timing. It's the time to do on the crop insurance for wheat. It's time to do something if you're going to do it. Any questions on that part?
On the enterprise, that's putting all your farms under one unit.
Yes.
And how much would you estimate a person to save?
Really good producers, it's about half price. You know, if it's people in the county that set the curve on yields, it's about half price. Average producers, well, last year I was taking people from $17 and $18 down to about $6 by going from optional to enterprise units.
So on that one up there at 585, you reduce that down to $3 or whatever?
That's the enterprise unit.
That's
enterprise. If he was on optional units, he'd be around 17. So if you've been paying around $6 or $8, you're probably already there. You're probably already on the enterprise units. And most people that are on it they know they're on it because they've had one farm that got wiped out and they didn't get a claim on that one farm, or if they did get it, you know, you can't settle your claim until all of your farms are harvested, because they don't know if there's a loss overall until everything's done. So it slows down the claim process a little bit, but cheapens it up an awful lot. We had a bunch of people on optional units and 60% coverage, and we took them to 75% enterprise units, bought crop hail, and still saved them about $7 or $8 an acre, even after buying the crop hail. And, you know, and that won't always be the right, I mean, you know, if you've got land that's scattered out, radically different soil types, you know, you all know sometimes those freezes are a whole lot worse in some areas than others. So if you get a freeze, you're gonna wish you had optional units if it don't freeze everything out. But every year, you're saving so much. We had one guy this year, he lost pretty much all of one field. And he was like, man, I'm gonna go back to optional units. We figured it up, and he still saved, even though he didn't get that field paid, he still saved between $8,000 and $9,000 on premium. Even if you could consider the fact that he lost a 110 acre field. So it's an enormous savings on premium year in and year out. And like I say, spread out, I don't argue too much with people if they say, yeah, I got some over here and some all the way over here, and you know, don't always, I mean, I lose fields over here and won't lose. Okay, I mean, that's why a lot of people still do it. But this year, if a guy's thinking about just canceling it, it makes a whole lot more sense to put them all together, cheapen it up, and keep as many dollars of coverage as you can.
If you got hailed out and you still went in there mowing belly, you could go in now and tell them that disaster acres you bailed it, and collect the LDT. Maybe.
Did you get paid insurance on the fields?
Yeah.
Okay, no, if you got paid insurance on the field, if insurance paid on it, that would only be like an early appraisal where you paid your premium, didn't have a claim, and just took the appraised yield, is where they, or if you short rated it and bailed it, you could do that. But if it was turned in as a loss on a claim and the claim paid, then there's no LDT on that.
If you short rate
shift acres to, annual forage. This is something that we thought might play in, it still may, but, you know, we've had a couple of decent rains in September, and they're calling for 2 to 3 inches this weekend, and so this may not work out to where it's a good alternative, but it could. If you've got an annual forage policy and you've been dry enough that it's triggered a loss already, you can opt to insure those acres on the rainfall policy as opposed to a multi-peril policy. We never know how that looks until the time comes, but most everybody that we deal with has got an annual forage policy available, and it's there for that reason. If that makes more sense on some of your acres, especially those that you aren't sure you're gonna harvest, then if it's dry enough, it makes a lot more sense to put those acres in a policy that's gonna write you a check than to put them in a policy that you're gonna have to write a check for the premium for because you're gonna short rate. So, if it's dry enough, that becomes really attractive. Doesn't look like it's gonna be, but, you know, we've all seen rain shut off in Oklahoma before, so it could happen. You can cancel your policy completely or take CAT coverage, just catastrophic coverage. If you're grazing out, you're not gonna harvest, and I mean, that kind of makes sense. Again, you know, I guess if you're not gonna harvest, it doesn't matter if you keep your crop insurance even to your banker, but I would still call them and say, hey, I'm not gonna harvest any wheat this year, is it okay to just cancel my policy? Or not have any crop insurance? I would sure talk with them about that. On CAT coverage, it's cheap, it's $300 a county, but you get what you pay for. If we have a bona fide disaster, CAT coverage just don't pay much. It's there, it beats a poking eye with a sharp stick, but it's not much. But that might be the best option. Again, just talk to your banker on that. Defer summer crops, kind of like what we talked about earlier, you know, by doing the cover crop or by just leaving it fallow and just say, hey, I'm gonna just set it out for the fall, and I'm gonna wait and see if there is a better crop to insure come summer, if prices have rebounded. If I can plant a crop and expect to make something on it, then I'll insure it, but I'm not gonna plant a crop and insure it when it doesn't look like I'm coming out when I put it in. Don't insure your acres. That's the only thing. I mean, as we get more and more options available, it becomes easier to mess up and insure acres twice, and you can't do that. You can't put your wheat on your multi-peril policy and put that wheat on a rainfall policy. You know, so we gotta be careful that we don't overlap things, and that's a little challenging for us when we're doing rainfall and someone else is doing the multi-peril. It's a little tougher for us to make sure we're doing it right. We don't mind doing that, and we do the best job we can. But your other guys, your other gal, whoever does your multi-peril, they have the same problem. If they know you're doing something with us, you're doing something with them, it's probably a little difficult for them to manage too. So just again, keep communications high, ask questions, make sure everybody knows what's going on. And then on the crop insurance, especially for wheat, if you want to make any changes, just remember, you've got, what is this, this is the 20th? So you got 10 days to make up your mind and to get those changes turned into your acre. And I think all agents have a little flexibility. I know we do. We've got a week or so after the deadline where we can actually sneak stuff in, but every time that we try to leverage that, then we've got so much to do in that week, we can't get it done either. So it's probably time to make up your mind what you want to do and get it turned in as quick as possible. Any questions on just the crop insurance side? Okay, livestock real quick. Livestock's not quite as complicated as crops, because if you've got cows, you're probably going to keep them. If you normally buy stockers, you're probably going to buy them. The only thing I would say, it's not fun, but I wouldn't operate without a floor in my cattle. I mean, put a pencil to it and see how much it takes you to raise a calf. You know about when you're going to sell them. You know about what they normally weigh. Try to find a deal that says, hey, if this deal keeps sliding, at least I've got a floor in my cattle. I know I'm not going to lose money. if I'm buying cattle, stockers to put out on meat, I'm looking real hard to buy them at a price that I can turn around and floor them at what I expect to have in them, so that, I mean, it's okay. I mean, there's not a lot of places you can go buy stockers and expect to make a lot of money right now. The margins just aren't there. David might have enough ends that he's got some things that work that I don't see, but there's not gobs of margin there. But if you can be in, if you've got wheat and you've got the stomach for it, if you can own them and have a floor where you know you're not going to lose money, or where you know you're going to lose an amount of money at maximum that you can handle, then you can look for that market to rebound and try to capitalize on an improved market come selling time. But unless you just have got the wherewithal to take it, even though these prices have crumbled, I remember, somebody here probably remembers the time when Snowball Jones hauled cattle for people forever. I remember him talking to my dad one time. He said, man, he said, there ain't no way they can get any cheaper. He said, oh, don't ever say that. He said, they can always get cheaper. You know, and they could. And so in case they do, have a floor. You can do that in a number of ways. First of all, you gotta kind of know where your break even is. You just gotta take a little time to do that. You can do a put option or a livestock risk protection, and all that is you pay a price up front to set a floor in the cattle market, not your cattle, where the cattle market is. Like right now, the feeder cattle index is about $1.34 today. So let's say that you say, I can handle $1.34, I can even handle $1.29, but I can't handle anything under $1.25. If it gets under $1.25, I'm losing more money than I can stand to lose. So then you price, what does it take to floor the market at $1.25? And if the price works and you can buy the calf, figure your inputs, figure the cost to protect the floor, and still kind of come out break even at today's market, hoping for a better market to sell on, then you're playing kind of protect myself marketing. You're just saying, I don't see any opportunity in it, but I can at least hold my money together, and if the market rebounds, then I've got cattle that I own that I can take advantage of another market. If I don't buy cattle and it goes up, I didn't make anything. I didn't risk anything, but I didn't make anything. Or if I just go buy it and hope it's better when I'm ready to sell, I might lose everything. So it looks like a time to kind of have a floor in those cattle. With puts, LRP, you pay a price up front, it protects against downside risk, it leaves the upside open. So in other words, if the market rallies back to $1.50, you get to sell your cattle at $1.50. You paid your premium for your put or for your livestock risk contract. That protected your floor, but lo and behold, it happened. The market rebounded, you get to sell on the up market. The other way you can do it is with hedges. It's the cheapest way, but if you hedge them, you're protecting against a down market and against an up market. If the market goes up, you don't benefit from it. If it goes down, you don't lose from it, except where you might miss your basis a little bit, but and it's cheap. You pay so much for a 50,000 pound contract, but it really, that's something that you more tend to use when you say the market today is offering me a price I can live with. If it just don't get a whole lot worse, I can live with this, so I'll just hedge these and just basically I'm ensuring that the price is going to end up about where it is now. That's what my margins are going to be. The problem is if your futures position goes against you, then you got to be coming up with margin money all the time, and that for some people that's not a problem. For other people it is. Delivery contracts, those are cheap. You contract to sell those cattle at a certain time at a certain weight. But again, protects you from a downside as long as the guy can write you the check when the time comes. But if the market goes up, you don't get the up price. You got to live with what you contracted. And in today's markets, I don't see delivery contracts being a great alternative because you're kind of locking yourself into making nothing, or maybe even losing money, or making very little. So delivery contracts have it in place, but I'm not sure that this market is that. And the other side of that is, if they're not at the right weight on the right date, then let's say the markets have gone down, and you're supposed to have them weighing 8 1/4, and you got them weighing 860 or 760. the guy can just walk it. He can just say, hey, they don't meet specs. And now you had a contract at a good price, market's lower, that's why he walked. When you gave him a right to by not having the cattle at the right weight. So yeah, there's some additional risk to those to delivery contracts as well. The other thing, and this is some of you may start throwing stuff at me, but I'm gonna say it anyway because I believe in it. The rainfall insurance on grass, you ought not ever be without it. Last year it just kind of broke even because we had the second wettest rainfall ever. This year we tried to outsmart Mother Nature a little bit. We saw the El Nino, out of the last 11 El Ninos, 9 of the 11, it stopped raining in April and May, and it just flat didn't rain the rest of the summer. So we took all of our early coverage and removed it and put it all kind of starting May, June, July. And we've had, in a lot of cases, pretty good rainfall even through May and June and July. And so a lot of people are getting invoices that we didn't get last year, or they're bigger than we got last year. We have got a lot of coverage in these later months. I think there's still plenty of time for that to turn around and be a good deal when the year's over. But let me show you why I believe in it, and then, so before you lynch me, at least let me speak my piece. It has nothing to do with anything but numbers. It's purely a numbers decision. If you look at, I don't care where you go in Oklahoma, if you start with 2015 and go backwards, and that black line right there is break even, green means you made money, you got more claims than the premium cost. Red means you didn't get enough rainfall to pay all of the claim, and so you had to write a check and leave that check with the company. Now, right now, a lot of the invoices that guys are getting, if you paid it right now, we've still got coverage through the end of the year. So if there's losses, they send it back to you. I wish they'd bill it out at the end of December, but they don't. They bill it in September. And so, in the past 20 years, there's been 5 years where the claims did not exceed the premium. The other 20 the other 15 of those 20 years, the policy, there was enough dry weather during the year that it paid the premium plus some. And you can see some of these years, like 11, the really dry year, 12 the year after, 14 2 years ago, 2005 and 6. I mean, there were some of those years that it was a huge payment. And so if you get in this program and stay in it, unless they change it, if you stay in it, it's gonna be a net revenue generator for your farm. Now, will it be a net revenue generator every year? No, because there's some years that we do have to pay premium. But 5 out of 20 is pretty good odds. And we don't know when this year's coming. Nobody knew it was going to be the hottest and driest year on record on January 1, 2011. So the only way that you were going to be in the rainfall product and benefit from having that coverage in 2011 was going to be in the program on January 1. So I don't know when it's going to rain, when it's not going to rain, but I know if I buy, I got a $9,300 invoice in the mail too. But I'm not dropping out, even if I have to pay it and don't get it back, because why would I drop out this year? What happened the next year? This year, what happened the next year? What happened the next year? What happened the next year? Yeah. Yeah, we could have, but I've got another slide that I could show, goes back to 48, and that 2 reds in a row is awfully rare, and when it happens, that's about all there is to. So, it's a money-making thing, but one thing we probably do need to do this year is we just need to double check with everybody, and we talk acres, and it's maybe everybody's a little confused when they're done, and we've got it in our package this year. What's the total bill if you have great rainfall all year and you end up having to pay every dollar of premium? What's the maximum premium you want to get a bill for? And then, if that's $3,000, then we'll make sure that the way we set up your coverage won't exceed that. But we talk, you know, so many dollars an acre on grazing, so many dollars an acre on haying acres, and that sounds reasonable, and it is, especially when you're looking at this. But how many acres you got at this, and how many at this, and add them together, you know, and that's where we had some people with some sticker shock, and it wasn't intentional, it was just, we talked product, we talked probabilities, we talked price per acre, but when you got a bunch of acres, it can turn into a lot of dollars. But I still say that, you know, we're gonna see some dry weather between now and the end of the year, probably, and if we do, we'll see that chipped away a little bit. But I believe in the, if we have a year just like we think we're gonna have this year, prices stay down, basis stays rotten, you know, and you make some of these other adjustments, but we also have, you know, a year like 01, or a year like 06, or a year like 11, or 12, or 14, and Mother Nature treats us bad too on drought. That's when not being in this program is gonna really be a bad deal. You know, it kind of becomes a little uncomfortable when we pay premium. But when we miss out on the benefit in a year where we really need it, that's when it's bad. That's when it's bad not to be in it. So I would say that as part of my planning, you know, even if I change the total dollars I had at risk on premium, I would keep some drought coverage in place. And then the final thing is basis. I mean, most everybody kind of knows what basis is. I've always heard it said that, I mean, the textbook definition is it's the difference in the futures price and the cash price on any given commodity. You know, what's the futures saying it should be worth, and what's it really bringing? It really is a reflection of what's the market doing to drive the business to different places. If a patch of co-op's full of wheat and they don't want any more wheat, they can't hold any more wheat, what they're gonna do is they're gonna raise the basis so that if they take any wheat, they're getting extra money for it because they didn't even want it. If they raise their basis and Carnegie Co-op leaves their basis alone and they were the same, then Carnegie's saying we want the wheat, and Apache would be saying we don't want the wheat. So they use basis to drive the product where it needs to go. What we're looking at right now is, you know, if you've sold wheat or if you've priced it recently, you know, we're at $1.32 basis. The historic basis in this area is about 30 to 40 cents. So we're about $1 over our historic basis for wheat. Same thing's kind of happening on corn and milo and beans. I mean, the basis is out of whack. And so part of our problem is price on the futures market, but the bigger part of our problem is the basis, the fact that the basis is so much higher. And your multi-peril crop insurance is all based on the future price. It doesn't include a basis. So, you know, when we sold our wheat for $3, the adjustment on the insurance was still based on the harvest price, which I can't remember what the harvest price ended up being. No, that was the insured price, but the harvest price was lower, but it wasn't nowhere close to where a lot of guys sold wheat at. Yeah, so it was like $4.50, so it was 60 or 70 cents under, but you were selling wheat $1.50 under the futures price. And there was no, I mean, that's kind of like in 40 years, that's never been a problem because we've never had a basis of $1.20 or $1.40 before. And so the crop insurance wasn't geared to address that risk, to do anything with it. And it's not going to be next year either. And I don't think the FSA offices are going to come out with anything. So basis is something we got to keep dealing with. We got to figure out how we want to handle it. There's people saying that it could be $1.50 to $1.75 at harvest if there's not a world power, you know, a world producing nation that's big in wheat that has a crop failure. They're saying that the wheat basis could be $1.50 plus. We talked about some things last year. We just got the information and we just kind of told you it's something to be thinking about. Whole farm revenue does account for basis. It's a different kind of crop insurance. It's where you insure everything you do on your whole farm. Okay, you put it all in one big basket and you say, okay, my basket, I'm expecting my basket to make $200,000 of revenue this year. And I wanna insure 75% of that $200,000. And then anything that happens that's an insurable risk that keeps you from putting money in that basket is covered. If basis stays where it's at, it would be an insurable risk, it'd be an insurable loss there, because on the projections, you get to use the historic basis. You don't have to use the current basis. So you get to use that 30 to 40 cents a bushel, and then if it's $1.50, then $1.10 per bushel is a basis loss that's still lost revenue. It's a covered loss in the whole farm. So, you know, again, I think I told everybody last year when we introduced this, I think one day it's gonna be probably the product that everybody goes to, everybody likes the best, because you can insure your cattle, your hay, your crops, your cotton. You can insure, if you do watermelons, we got a guy here that does organic vegetables. You can do everything under one umbrella. And because you've got diversity in that insurance policy, you've got cheaper premiums too. And that's where I think it might fit some people this year if they're saying, hey, I just want to get my premium down as cheap as I can get it. Well, if you've got cow-calf operation and wheat and grain sorghum, and you want to remove all the underlying multiperil, again, with your bank's permission, and it's not even the way I recommend it, but if you wanted to just get rid of everything, but have a whole farm policy that covered you for what you're doing, that premium would be about 2%. What was the cheapest we saw a while ago? 4%. So it's about half price of what that lowest regular multiperil policy is. So you're insuring the revenue you expect from your cattle, from your hay, and from your crops for about half the price of what it costs in a multiperil policy. The reason is there's less risk to the company for that, because if your wheat doesn't do good, odds are your alfalfa might make up for it, or your cattle might make up for it. But still, it's a cheap way to insure a lot of revenue, and it might be a good fit for some people this year. Uninsured crops and livestock are fully exposed to that basis risk. And right now, I'm saying if the basis don't change, you know, if you insure 75% of your expected revenue and it's heavily in grain, that just the basis is going to meet that 25% deductible. I mean, if you've got $1, if you sell wheat for $3 or for $2.50, and you had expected $4.60, which is where the insured price is, based on the futures and a 50-cent basis, so it'd be $4.10, and you end up getting $3, that's 30% loss just to basis. That's measured deductible. Then if you've had any yield loss, then you know you're into the full loss if you're all crop. So basis is covered under it, and it's probably a pretty good year to consider that. We've got actually till the end of the year to sign up on that. And you can leave your multiperil alone and do that on top of it. It's a lot cheaper, goes down to 1-point-something% if you leave your multiperil alone. Just leave it there and then insure on top of it. But that's just something that the whole farm revenue, because of basis, probably has a better place in a lot of operations this year than it did last year. I think I just kind of went through all this real quick. Most anything you grow is insurable. It's extremely flexible. You know, you say, well, gosh, I don't even know what I'm going to do this year. Well, if you would like whatever you do to be insured, you turn in what you think you're going to do between now and the end of the year. You update that in March. What am I actually doing now? You adjust it one more time in July 15th. That gives you a chance to, did I do summer crops or whatever? So you start off saying, here's what I anticipate doing. March, it's like, okay, here's a few changes. July, here's my final, this is the final run. This is what I actually ended up doing, and it lets you adjust as you go along the way. So that kind of flexibility in a year where we're not real sure what we're gonna do could also come in pretty handy. the biggest thing I want to point out on that, if you do have a CAT policy of any kind, a catastrophic only policy, you cannot have a CAT policy for any crop and do whole farm revenue. So if you've already been in and changed your wheat policy to a CAT, and you think, gosh, I think I'd rather do that whole farm, you need to cancel that CAT policy before the end of September, or you won't have the option to do whole farm revenue. So, production, FSA programs, crop insurance, and basis. You know, those are some things to think about, some things we probably want to avoid. If there's one or two things that you heard that you said, well, most of that I didn't even understand, but there was a couple of things that I probably ought to check out. You know, circle those on your notes so you don't forget which ones they were. And if you've got someone that can help you with it, you know, get on it and get it taken care of before the 30th. If you need some help, whether you've done things with us before in the past or not, if you want us to help you sort through some of this or give you a little more information on some of it, we'd be glad to do it. Any questions from anyone? All right, thanks for coming. I don't know that they bought any barley. They would buy a little for feed, I think, if they had space for it.
I think that's the last one I used to take it in there and sell it on kind of.
Is that what I called and asked about the other day, barley?
Do what?
What was it I called and asked about when you take? Oh, it was assessing.
You can insure it, but